Camilla walked into the police station for some paperwork, but one overly confident cop decided to play judge and executioner. He thought he had everything under control, but the truth hit harder than he ever could. That day became a lesson he'd never forget. Let's start from the beginning. The morning at the precinct was business as usual. Stacks of paperwork nobody wanted to touch, random arrests trickling in, and officers cracking jokes over stale coffee in the break room. Officer Bradley Carter, a 40-year-old with a reputation as the precinct's self-appointed king, strutted around like he owned the place. His snarky remarks and over-the-top attitude weren't exactly loved by his colleagues, but they had learned to roll their eyes and let him run his show. Just as Carter was about to launch into another one of his unsolicited back-in-my-day stories, the station doors swung open. Enter Camilla Johnson. She wasn't just any random visitor. Standing tall at 5'10", she had an air of authority that turned heads instantly. Her navy blue suit fit her like it was custom-made, and the quiet confidence in her stride was impossible to miss. Camilla, a 48-year-old black woman, walked straight to the reception desk, ignoring the curious glances of officers who weren't used to someone walking in like they owned the place. Bradley noticed her immediately. His smirk widened as he leaned back in his chair, clearly gearing up for a show. "Well, well," he said loudly, standing up and sauntering over. "What do we have here? Another one of you strolling into our precinct. What's the occasion, huh? Got tired of running? Thought you'd turn yourself in?" His words carried the kind of sarcasm that begged for a reaction. But Camilla didn't flinch, not even a little. Her calm gaze locked onto him as she replied, her voice sharp and steady. "I'm here on business. If you have questions, direct them to my attorney." That response hit Carter like a bucket of cold water. The nerve, he thought. She didn't just brush him off, she shut him down without raising her voice. His smirk twisted into a sneer. "Oh, so you're one of those. Think you're untouchable, huh? Well, let me see if we can change that." He turned toward the younger officers standing nearby who had been awkwardly trying to blend into the background. "Hey, you two," he barked. "Escort her to my office. I've got a feeling she matches the description of someone we're looking for." The younger officers hesitated. They exchanged uneasy glances, silently questioning the legitimacy of Carter's theatrics. But in the end, orders were orders. "This way, ma'am," one of them said, his voice tinged with discomfort. Camilla followed without a word, her posture as composed as ever. Carter, meanwhile, sauntered back to his office, his chair squeaking obnoxiously as he threw himself into it. He kicked his feet up on the desk, leaning back with the smug satisfaction of someone who thought he was in complete control. The younger officers ushered Camilla in, clearly uncomfortable with the situation but unsure how to navigate it. Carter gestured toward the chair across from him. "Have a seat," he said, his grin more predatory than friendly. Camilla remained standing. "I'll stand, thank you," she replied, her tone firm, but not unkind. It was the kind of composure that got under Carter's skin. "Oh, so you're going to play the tough one, huh? Well, let's see how long that lasts," he said, rifling through a stack of files on his desk. His tone was mocking, but his frustration was starting to show. "You know, I think I've got just the case that fits you perfectly. Let's see, petty theft? Nah, you're too polished for that. Oh, maybe resisting arrest, that one's always fun." Camilla didn't bite. She stood still, her expression unchanging. It was clear that she wasn't intimidated, and the realization only made Carter more determined to rattle her. In that moment, the room was charged with unspoken tension. Camilla's silence spoke volumes, while Carter's exaggerated theatrics revealed far more about him than he intended. It wasn't just a clash of personalities. It was the spark of something much bigger. Camilla stood her ground, her posture unshaken and her gaze steady. Bradley Carter leaned back in his creaky office chair, shuffling through a messy pile of case files like he was on the brink of cracking the century's biggest mystery. His every movement was dripping with exaggerated importance, the kind only someone desperately trying to assert dominance could muster. After a few theatrical flips of paper, he suddenly stopped, holding up a file with a flourish. Well, look at this," he said, his voice practically oozing mock surprise. "Breaking and entering. Sounds just about right for you." Or wait, maybe you're the mastermind behind that store robbery on Maple Street, huh? That ring any bells? He grinned, clearly entertained by his own sense of humor. Camilla raised an eyebrow, her expression unbothered. Her response was calm, her words sharp as a blade. Speaking of stealing, officer, I believe you're robbing me of my time. The air in the room shifted. Bradley's smirk twitched into something less controlled. He slammed the file shut, standing up so abruptly his chair rolled back a few inches. Excuse me, he snapped, his voice rising. You think you can just talk to me like that? Let me tell you something, lady. People like you don't get respect around here. You're nothing, a zero. And let me make one thing crystal clear, you have no voice in this room. Camilla didn't flinch. Instead, she stepped closer to the desk, meeting his fiery glare with an icy calm. Your threats won't change the facts, Officer Carter. You're overstepping your authority. That was the breaking point. His face turned an alarming shade of red, and his jaw tightened. Overstepping, huh? He barked, stepping around the desk toward her. Let me show you how we handle your kind when they overstep. Before anyone could react, he raised his hand and delivered a sharp slap across her face. The sound echoed in the small office like a gunshot. Camilla's head turned slightly from the force, but her expression remained composed. She slowly straightened, her eyes locked on his with a look that could freeze fire. Bradley's chest heaved as he stood there, his breath loud in the otherwise silent room. That's how we do things here, he spat, his voice cracking slightly under the weight of his own fury. Then the office door swung open with a force that nearly sent it off its hinges. Standing in the doorway was Gerald Harris, the state prosecutor. His tailored suit and polished demeanor were in stark contrast to the chaos he had just walked into. His eyes landed on Camilla first, widening with recognition. "Judge Johnson," he exclaimed, his tone a mix of relief and confusion. "I've been looking all over for you. Have you had a chance to review the documents for our case?" Bradley froze. Every trace of bravado drained from his face as his eyes darted between Camilla and Gerald. The realization hit him like a freight train. Camilla, still composed, turned toward the prosecutor with a small, measured smile. "Not yet," she said, her voice steady and clear. "But it seems we may have another case worth investigating." Gerald's expression shifted, his confusion deepening as he took in the tense atmosphere and Bradley's pale face. Bradley, on the other hand, was rooted to the spot, his mouth slightly open but no words coming out. The weight of his mistake crashed down on him like a tidal wave. The room was silent, except for the faint creak of Bradley's desk as he leaned against it, his legs suddenly too weak to hold him up. Camilla, unshaken, stood tall, her presence commanding the room in a way no one could ignore. The story blew up overnight. A witness had discreetly recorded everything, Bradley Carter's heavy-handed shove as he dragged Camilla into his office, her composed demeanor as his temper flared, and the unmistakable sound of his slap. Though the video didn't capture every detail, the tension and injustice were palpable. By the time it hit the internet, it was all anyone could talk about. News outlets picked it up, hashtags started trending, and suddenly the case became a rallying cry for accountability. Camilla, ever the professional, had hoped to handle the situation quietly, but this wasn't just about her anymore. The public was demanding action, and she knew that staying silent would mean letting down everyone who saw themselves in her story. So she prepared for what came next, the courtroom. A month later, the courtroom was packed. The buzz of murmured conversations filled the air as people squeezed into every available seat. On one side, Bradley Carter sat at the defense table, his once confident smirk replaced by a grim expression. His lawyer fidgeted with a stack of papers, clearly aware of the uphill battle ahead. On the other side sat Camilla, calm and collected, her presence commanding respect even in silence. The proceedings began, and the prosecution wasted no time. They played the video, letting the evidence speak for itself. The courtroom was silent, as the grainy footage showed Carter's aggression and Camilla's quiet resistance. The sound of the slap was met with audible gasps from the audience. Camilla took the stand, her voice steady as she recounted the events. "Officer Carter didn't see me as a person," she said, her words carrying the weight of lived experience. "He saw a stereotype. And when I didn't conform to his expectations, he used his authority to try and silence me. Her testimony wasn't just about her ordeal. She painted a broader picture, highlighting how systemic issues allowed behavior like Carter's to go unchecked. "What happened to me isn't unique," she continued. "It's part of a larger problem that affects countless people who don't have the privilege of being heard." Carter's defense scrambled to counter. His lawyer leaned heavily on the argument that Carter didn't know who Camilla was, but that reasoning only backfired, drawing attention to his biases and lack of professionalism. Carter himself took the stand, stumbling through a half-hearted apology. "I didn't mean to... I thought..." he stammered, his words doing little to help his case. The prosecutor pounced on his hesitation, emphasizing that respect and decency shouldn't depend on someone's title or status. The jury deliberated for less than a day. The verdict was clear. Guilty of misconduct and abuse of power, Carter was dismissed from his position, his career in law enforcement effectively over. But the case didn't stop there. The trial sparked a wave of reform. The precinct faced intense scrutiny, and mandatory training on bias and de-escalation was implemented across the department. Community leaders began working with the police to rebuild trust, and a task force was established to address systemic issues that had been ignored for too long. Camilla, meanwhile, became a symbol of resilience and justice. She didn't seek the spotlight, but the public couldn't get enough of her story. Interviews, op-eds, and community events followed. Her message was clear. This isn't about revenge. It's about creating a system where everyone is treated with dignity. The courthouse steps were crowded with reporters, microphones thrust forward as Camilla exited the building. She paused, her gaze sweeping over the sea of faces. "This isn't just my victory," she said, her voice carrying over the hum of the crowd. "This is a step forward for everyone who's ever been made to feel invisible. Justice isn't just about punishment, it's about progress." The cameras flashed as she turned to leave, her silhouette framed against the courthouse behind her. The moment wasn't just an ending, it was a beginning. A reminder that one person's courage could ignite a movement, and that change, however slow, was always possible. What would you have done in his place? Share your thoughts in the comments. Have you or someone you know ever faced a similar situation? Let us know. Don't forget to like, share, and spread the word. This story was created to shine a light on important issues and inspire positive change. Your voice matters, and together we can make the world a better place.